So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Steps Collective. Today is something that we set up the Steps Collective this year to do a regular monthly meetup, but then just make it a platform for other people to do other things on it, be it pub meetups, coffee shop meetups, or other talks like this. And Jay sent a message fairly on, or maybe March, maybe February, and say, I'd like to do this thing with Ida. So, and I'd seen Ida's work on LinkedIn and in other places on DesignShifts, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be super highly appropriate and really a question I think we are all, even if you're design or design adjacent, just beginning to think about what it is that we do, what are we trying to do, what change are we trying to affect. And what does that look like moving forwards into the 21st century? So I'm going to start by, if this is your first Steps Collective, welcome. We have, just as a way of kind of like setting a tone of action, some words that we tend to read out. I'm going to read the short version because I was looking back at all the versions that we did before, and I think this one will help set the context before I hand over to Jay. So, STEPS stands for Show the Easy Place to Start. As we navigate these transitional times and traverse the emerging regenerative territory, we commonly find that there is no obvious path to follow. With many questions to navigate, yet no single answer to guide us, we look for the footprints of others to consider where we might take our own next steps. So, with that, I will hand you over to Jay and to Ida, and I will try and pin them both. If let's see if I can do that, because that should bring them both to the top of the LinkedIn. I'll do that in the background. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that steps introduction. Okay, like John mentioned, okay, before that, I myself am Jay. I go by the name Jayavanthi Gayathri. I know it's too long. You can call me Jay. So here's how we planned out the next hour. So we're just going to have a little casual conversation with Ida. Um, who is she? What is she doing? What is design shifts? And sort of go through those, and then she has a little lovely activity prepared for us. It's not too long, it's quite short. It's just gonna jump in and do that. Meanwhile, please keep all your questions, thoughts, emojis coming in the chat. That'll be super good. And yeah, feel free to unmute anytime and ask anything you feel like asking. But towards the end, we have like a little segment where which is gonna open the stage. You can ask your questions there as well. Yeah, I will introduce Ida. Ida Persson, right? Sorry if I'm murdering your full name.
Fine.
I'll just stick to Ida probably, yeah. She is a designer. She uses design, strategy, and storytelling to challenge systems, imagine regenerative futures. She's currently based out of Munich, and she's currently doing all the amazing work independently. But before that, she used to work as a communication design lead at IDEO. But in short, she's really a dreamer and a fantastic storyteller. A little backstory, like John said, I've been following Design Shifts for like a year, which was her very first Design Shifts post. I think last year around October or something, if I'm not right. And if anyone is curious to see that post, here's the quick link to it. You can just go back to that. That was the first moment I started following her. So Ida, why don't you tell us what is Design Shifts?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Jay. Really excited to be here. And yeah, like Jay mentioned, I started this project called DesignShifts. I guess it was back in last October, like you mentioned. And I'm calling it a collaborative learning journey where we're exploring the future of design. So the future for and through design. So the idea kind of started as we find ourselves in this, with all the things happening in the world, and sort of how the climate conversation. I really wanted to explore, where does design fit into this? I feel like currently a lot of design is causing harm, and I wanted to think of ways that we could use design to create a better future. And I think a lot of that is also rethinking what is the purpose of design and how do designers collaborate with other people. So that's kind of what the shifts have been about. So I'm exploring it through different shifts, so kind of a from to kind of scenarios in different areas. And even though each shift is kind of independent, I also find that they belong together. They're kind of interconnected. So no topic is kind of isolated. They all kind of bleed into one another. But right now I've been doing them as individual shifts.
Uh, Can you like actually show us the what does that shift look like? And
Yeah, sure. Um, Let me share. I'll share the website really quick. I can share my screen. Um, showing. Oh, okay. So this is the website. This is designshift.org. And these are some of the shifts that I've been exploring. So how do we move from artificial to authentic? How do we move from creating things to creating change, from control to creativity? So yeah, I've been exploring a lot of them, and Jay can share. Yeah, Jay shared the site, so you can check them out as well. And how I've been exploring them is kind of through. I started just by posting on LinkedIn, like Jay mentioned, and now I want to also try to explore each topic more in detail, write more about them, and then also collaborate with people that are working in this field, these different areas, because each topic is really big, and I'm not an expert in all these different topics. And I also don't think that the future of design is designers working in isolation. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it at the moment. Uh, yeah. So you can look at them uh, on your own.
amazing. Like what pushed you, or what were the driving forces to do the shift?
Um, yeah, actually, so you posed this question beforehand, and I was trying to figure out why. I feel like over the last couple of years, I've been kind of in a state of shifting myself. So figuring out what do I want to do, where do I want to live, what do I want to do with my life, what do I want to do as a designer. And I always keep coming back to this idea of like using design to make the world a better place in the smallest way that I can as an individual. Um, and then last year, when I left IDEO, so they closed their office here in Munich, and then I kind of was in this space of in between. So I had this full-time position, and now I was thinking, okay, what do I do next? And I decided that I really wanted to focus on social impact work as a freelance designer. And then this idea of shifting kind of came out of that. So I started thinking about, okay, if I want to move into this space more as a social impact designer, what does that mean for my practices, my posture, my perspective? How do those things need to shift? And that's kind of how I started. But I feel like it's more of an ongoing journey versus like one day I had this idea. So it's kind of been ongoing, yeah, thinking about where does this go next?
Amazing. How many shifts do you have so far, though?
I think I posted maybe 25 or 26 or something. I have a lot in drafts as well, but some of them are big, some of them are small. So I think some are more thoughts, and others I think can be built out into more substantial topics.
Mm, nice. How do you like come up with the shifts? Like, okay, where do you get your inspiration?
I don't actually know. I mean, a lot of it comes from like my connections, my friends, like the environment that we find ourselves in. Like reading other people's work is really inspiring. Reading books, yeah, and then just thinking about where we find ourselves as a society, and also dreaming about where do we want to actually be and what does that future look like. So it kind of comes from many different places, and I don't really know exactly where it is.
Okay, so it's like critical friends and conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And then also through reading
Mm,
uh, books or other people's work, other people's posts, things like that.
interesting. Is there any shift you felt like, should I put this or not? Will it be controversial?
Um, Let me see. So actually the first shift I ever posted was about this idea that how do we move from universal principles to local practices? And I feel this really strongly. Like as the designers, we usually think about these universal solutions, and we think they can be applied all over the world. But I think the more we learn, the more we realize that local practices is what we need to do. And when I posted is like some of I was actually challenged during in the comments around like what role like why would designers go into communities and like try to apply local practices in those communities? And I really appreciate this comment and this push. And for me, I think it's more about like hiring people with local expertise versus me going into local communities and trying to design solutions for them. So I think that's more around pushing us to do more co-design and community-led design, which requires a whole nother shift for designers, I think, both in our mindset and also in the processes that we use in order to make those types of projects happen.
That reminds me the co-design part. Is that the reason like you started those sessions or how did that come?
Oh, yeah. So I've been doing these practice, I call them practice sessions. Me and Jay actually hosted one back in, when was it?
March.
March.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of you might have been there. It was a really nice experience. And I wanted to, so as I've been thinking about these shifts, I feel like I'm kind of in the theory space. So I'm thinking about them, I'm writing about them, but I also wanted to create a space to practice. So I tried to host these sessions bi-monthly, not on the regular schedule, but about every other month where people can join and we try to co-create together. So it's less about me teaching about design shifts and more about other people bringing their perspectives. We're designing something together. I wouldn't say we're solving problems because it's an hour and a half, and I would be a bit naive if we say we can solve something in an hour and a half, especially big problems. But it's more of a space for people to get together. And I think co-creation is a big part of what I want this whole thing to be. Oh, and also learning from others as well. And every time I do one, I feel really energized after, and I feel like, wow, I learned something. So it's also a space for me to learn. So it's a bit, yeah, a selfish agenda as well.
If any of you is interested to know about the past sessions, you can find it on our website, I think. There's
Yeah.
like events page on the
Yeah.
DesignShifts. And there's like a more detailed version of what did we unpack and all those things in the session. Just a side note.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so every session we do a little write up, and you can read about what happened. It's better if you're there, but it's also a nice way if you miss the session that you can learn about it.
Mhm. Um, is there any shift you noticed within yourself since you started doing the design shifts?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I'm always shifting. And I think one of the things as I've been exploring this idea of like from to, I'm also recognizing that everything is a spectrum. So it's kind of challenging my own project and my own idea around we don't really move from one place to another. We kind of move in between and we go back and forth. And the shift I've noticed in myself is like, or it's both a shift and a challenge is how do I hold the tension of being in the space in between? So how can I hold one part with another part and be okay with that or learn how to be comfortable with like being in a space in between. So it's less about a shift in myself and more about recognizing that shifting
Mhm.
happens over time. And sometimes we don't notice when we have shifted either until way later when we can take a look back, take a look back. Yeah. So yeah.
That's so true, actually. This the shifts help me sort of. There are like multiple projects we've been working on in the. Like I'm doing a master's now for a little context, so there's a lot of projects we work on. But the shifts actually help me bucket them or put them into context. Like there are things in head all over the. Like it's just there all over. But one of the design shift, like the from being influenced by nature to being influenced by nature. That shift particularly like hit a lot for me, and it helped me frame my practice,
Mm.
what kind of project I'm doing. So that actually really helps to what you said previously.
Yeah. So how have you done that?
I think there's this one project in the last term where we were exploring. Uh, we just want to take something very simple, like as simple as a calendar or a time or a clock, and see how dissect and see. So I think we picked calendar. That it was like a small group project. Me, Carrie, and Asmita, like three people just picked it up, and we were just seeing how this calendar was designed. Was it designed by influencing nature or the other way around? And then you can see like a lot of traditional calendars are mostly influenced by nature. Like from where I come from, I'm from Chennai, the southern part of India. The typical traditional Tamil calendar, like I'm from Tamil Nadu, so the Tamil calendar we have has like a heavy influence on the nature cycles, and you they also have the astrological aspects to it. But I can see like where that came from now. Maybe back then I was like, this doesn't make sense. But now I can see the underlying like the layers of it, how they did that. And I also like share the same thing with the Chinese calendar. I think Harry was mentioning, my fellow mate. So we can like sort of see, even though it's put into astrological things, there are aspects to it that got influenced by nature. So you were like retrospecting on today's Georgian calendars. That was quite
Yeah.
helpful for us.
That's super cool. Yeah, and I think, like, for me, like, growing up in Scandinavia, I never reflected on the fact that our calendars are kind of made up and time is not, it's not structured in the way that we kind of approach time, like nature does. Like, we kind of are told that you should be equally productive all year round, and that's not really how nature works. Even, like, growing up in the north of Sweden, we're told that in the winter, you should be equally productive. Okay, but the sun sets at 2:30. How does that really influence me, and my ability to be productive? Which we never really reflected on or took into consideration in any form or fashion, so
So true. Is there any particular shift you like? Your favorite shift?
my favorite, uh
Also, people in the call, please keep it going. Like, if you find any favorite shifts, just type it out in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it kind of, it's a bit depending on how what's on my mind during the certain weeks. One that I really want to explore more is the idea from moving from fear to love. And I'm currently reading All About Love by who wrote it? Help me.
Bell
uh,
hooks.
huh?
Bell hooks.
Yeah, exactly. Bell hooks. So as I'm reading her book, I'm gonna incorporate a lot of her things into that shift and build it out more, without repeating everything she says, because basically her book is just exactly what I want to write about. So yeah, that's one that's top of mind for me right now.
That reminds me, like, because I have the space now, we all have the space now to, like, sort of unpack the shift, and not just that being sustainable or regenerative is option. If I think about it back when I was working, that was like almost impossible to do in because of the atmosphere in a corporate setting. Do you have any thoughts on how would you handle it in a corporate setting?
Yeah. Um,
Sorry, this was not part of the immediate
no,
question.
no, no, no. It's totally fine. I think the way I kind of think about it is, so I dream of a better system. So I think the system we find ourselves in now is not really conducive to flourishing. Um, and I dream of a better system. So what would it look like if we rethought the system and created a system where people could flourish, where the planet was flourishing? That's like the dream. But I also recognize, like, we find ourselves in this system and we can't just be like, hey, I'm doing nothing. We have to kind of keep functioning within the system. So I think within the system, I think about it as like a place where we should practice harm reduction. And what that means is how can we incorporate practices that are helping us avoid harm? So John posted about like how might we, like moving from how might we to at what cost. That's something that we can incorporate in our practices now. So we can still keep asking how might we, but we can also ask at what cost. So we can within our projects put those things into place where we're saying, hey, wait a minute, let's take a look at this idea that we have. What might be some of the unintended consequences of it? And I think that's a way that you can actually practice harm reduction now without needing to kind of rethink the whole system. I mean, we are rethinking the system, but while still functioning within the current system. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you for that, John. Before we move on to the little activity it has prepared for us, I must ask about the visuals. It's like stunning. I love the visuals. What is your thought process behind? Like, how did you arrive at your branding, visual branding?
Um, it's been a bit of a my Figma space is it's a mess, but
Seen it actually.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot going on. Um, but I started with this idea, so kind of like the branding started with the name. So I wanted to use the name DesignShifts, and then I created the logo for it. And then I wanted to use images from nature. So I've been using a lot of free imagery that is more traditional, but that comes from old illustrations, old books, and things like that that are open source. And I wanted to do that because I wanted to use something. I think part of where we need to go, especially in the space of innovation, we're always so focused on what's new and what's next. But I think there's an idea of like valuing what was, and that was why I wanted to use these illustrations that already exist and these images that already exist, and then build off of those. So use those as the base, and then do layering, texturing, in order to make it feel um, more tactile, I would say. Um, and then like finding typefaces and stuff like that is always it's a process, and who knows, I might change it.
Wow.
But now I'm at the point where I'm like, I have so many, so if I change something, then I need to redo them all, and that's a lot of work. So I probably won't change the typeface or anything at the moment.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. Is there any next shift you're thinking about that's not out yet? If you're okay to share it.
Yes. Let me look at my Notion. So I have like this Notion space where I write notes about them. But one thing one thing that I've been and then it's kind of in one of the shifts I've been posting about before, but this idea of like moving from fixing to feeling. So in design, we talk a lot about like design is a space for solving problems. And for me, I've recognized that not everything is a problem to be solved. And because I've recognized this because I usually take a very problem-solving approach to everything. So if I have like a physical pain, for example, I'm like, okay, how do I solve this? Okay, I'm Googling things, I'm trying to kind of fix it in the moment. And sometimes I feel like I'm doing it because I don't want to feel it. And if I just wait and don't try to fix it, I'm actually able to overcome this physical pain or emotional pain a lot quicker. And that's kind of one of the shifts that I'm thinking about. What role can design play if we're not trying to be problem solvers all the time? Sometimes I think it's important, but what if design was a way to create a space for people to just be or feel their emotions and not try to fix their emotions, for example?
I've actually found it a bit contradicting with art because lately we've been looking at a lot of art that's going, like a lot of exhibitions going around in the college space.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, there's always like within the design college, art versus design, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
outside we are all together, but inside we are like, no design, no art. So I
Yeah.
think thinking how does that, like, because art gives you that space to sort of sink in and feel and like, is that like how does it differ from design or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I used to believe I used to be very much like design is not art because a lot of people would only evaluate my work based on the aesthetics. They'd be like, "Oh, that's so pretty. You're a good designer." And I'm like, "No, wait, like it's more to it. It's like trying to communicate something, it's solving a problem and all these things." And I think that's still important to distinguish between art and design. But I also think there are a lot of overlaps. Now, like, as I've grown and as a designer, I feel like, okay, if somebody sees my design shifts and says like, "Oh, that's really beautiful. I really appreciate the aesthetics." Then I'm like, "Okay, that's really nice to hear." And that also plays a role. So it's not just about like, yeah, but it's also effective. Yeah, but it's also trying to tell you something. So I think people can appreciate it for different reasons. And I think that art can play a role, especially if we're trying to also move more towards we're in design, we're very much in like the brain, trying to solve problems with our brain, but a lot of knowledge also sits in our bodies. And how does that fit into the practices? How can we really tap into that as well? And I think art can play a big role in that. Um, so yeah, I think I used to be a debater, and now I'm more of a yeah. They can both coexist. It's not a fight between the two.
Amazing. Keeping a little time check, do we want to do a little activity and explore
Yeah,
the tips for ourselves?
yeah,
I'll quickly share a Miro link board on the chat.
yeah.
You can all jump there and then we can have some little fun.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully this is fun, this activity. I haven't tried it before, so you will be the first people to try it. I will share my screen. And if you rather just write things on a piece of paper, you can also do that. It's okay. You don't have to be in Miro, but I'll share my screen really quickly.
Anyone has any access issues, just nudge me.
Yeah, so this is the space. So the whole idea of design shift is kind of moving. I've been thinking about it as like moving from design as a tool that contributes to division, destruction, and isolation to design as a practice that unites, rebuilds, and reconnects us to our inner selves, each other, and nature. So that's how I've been thinking about the idea of design shifts and where do we want to get to. And in this board, you see like in between, there's this idea. How do we get from one place to the next? And I just want to use how long should we do? Like 5 minutes? 7? What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, 5 to 10.
Yeah, we can do 5 minutes of just like writing as many posts as possible around your ideas for how we can move from the left sides to the right side. And that can be anything. So it can be collaborate with other people, creating spaces where people can heal, whatever comes to mind, top of mind. And we'll do that for 5 minutes. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, so add things.
okay. Hope everyone is able to access the board. Um, Meanwhile, if anyone has any questions, feel free to go for it.
Mm.
Oh, we have something from John. An amazing anecdote. I was about to ask John. Thank you. So we have a question, Ida. How long does the process of working on a shift usually takes?
Um, that's a good question. So just what I start doing is I kind of have a lot of unfinished ideas in Notion. And then I finish the LinkedIn. I usually post on LinkedIn, so I create one LinkedIn post. Takes maybe a day or so. But then some of the shifts I'm writing out in longer posts. And that takes me maybe 2 weeks. It kind of depends. I'm very much of a designer who like I start something and then I leave it and then I come back. So it's not a very structured process. It's kind of moving from an idea and then I get stuck and then I go back. So I would say it takes maybe a week in total, but that week is broken up into many weeks. And I usually work on a couple of them at the same time because yeah, my mind goes in a lot of different places. I hope that answers it. Thank you, Nina.
It's more like you keep brooding on it.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it changes last minute as well, where I'm like, oh, this is not the right word, or this is too close to something else. So yeah.
Thank you, Nina, for that question. And feel free to unmute. Speak.
Oh, that's only posted. I need to add some.
They have a lot of interesting post-its going here.
Have you added any, Jay?
Sorry.
Have you added any?
No, I was actually reading everything. Probably I will add something. Did you add something?
Yeah, I added a few.
Mm.
I'm reading others. They're very good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ada. Somebody put make design silly again. I love this so much. In- Ugh.
Oh, I love this giving power to the people closest to the problem. I don't know who put it, but totally agree.
Experiment. Yeah, this is great. I love this so much. This can become like all these ideas could just become the how-to shift um, guide.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions, please go for it.
I've got one written down, which I kind of I also kind of like put on the board as well. And it was I think okay. Let me make it a question first, without the sort of like the whole preamble. But do you find yourself now doing things that you go, oh, I hadn't really considered that capital D design before, but actually it is. It's small d design, and that's actually it's broken you out of how your career went, how what you were learning so far.
How would you define the big D versus little d?
Good question. I feel that there are. So, for instance, I like the Design Council systemic design framework. Not all of it, but I really like the roles in it. I like where they talk about the four roles of a designer as being connector and convener, systems thinker, leader and storyteller, and designer and maker.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, I think the connecting and convening role is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily seen as capital D design,
Yeah.
but actually it's maybe the kind of like the subtlest and most important part when we're trying to make change is kind of like, yeah, but who needs to be there?
Yeah.
Where is there?
Right, right, right. Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think like I was writing about this recently around how do we move from designing things to designing change and what is the role of the designer. And I think that was part of the post when you posted about this event. And one of them is like, how do we become better collaborators? And I think designers are very much focused on, or I am too, very drawn to this idea that I want to make stuff. So creating things is like part of what I really enjoy. And I think it comes down to also recognizing where is a place for me to try to make something new and where is a place for me to try to support other people. Um, and I think part of the problem is that we were kind of evaluated based on what we make and what we own. So it's like Ida made this thing. She created this. It's hers. And then that immediately becomes this idea of separation. But that's how we're recognized. That's how we're awarded, like both in work and also in the digital space. And it's like, this is the founder of this thing. This is the maker of this thing. And I think that sometimes holds us back in really creating change because we're kind of have this hero mindset. And especially in storytelling as well, it's like Martin Luther King was the one that did these things, but there was all these people behind him or with next to him who were also doing it, but they're not getting recognized. And I don't really know, I think I'm not answering your question, but this is what it sparked for me around like how do we then evaluate and kind of award also the idea of working together as a group and as a collective versus one individual is getting the attention. And yeah, like one of the shifts that I worked on with this idea of like from moving from one star to many sparks when it comes to leadership. So it's like, it's not about the one superstar that's like scoring all the goals on the basketball field. It's about the whole team doing it together. And how do we kind of create reward systems that acknowledges that? And I think that is like a capital D design skill, but it also needs supportive systems that are rewarding those things as well.
That's great, and it reminds me a lot of so Andy Thornton, so one of the Steps Collective stewards as well, pushed Bruno Latour's A Cautious Prometheus my way maybe a year ago now. And within that, there's a kind of like and this is like a talk from like 2008, but there's a real push to sort of like design is a small, humble, cautious profession. Yet it feels to me, and I think to um, Kyle's point earlier in the chat as well, that it feels in part that it's been pushed to this heroic status by the Silicon Valley, perhaps ideal perspective of no, there has to be a capital D designer. There has
Yeah.
to be an auteur who has made this amazing thing happen.
Yeah.
When for the majority of history, that's not been the case.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and I think also recognizing that design happens by non-designers every day, all day. So it's like a physical therapist is a designer creating the program based on the learnings about their patient. But we've been trying to prove our worth as designers for so long that it's kind of become this argument of like, no, designers are special and designers have this unique thing, which I think design has a role to play, but does it have to be, I don't know, does it have to always be proven? And can we also recognize that design happens in many different places in many different ways? And I often find it really funny because my mom, she used to work with children with disabilities, and they organize these camps where parents and children came on the weekend. And when I started working at IDEO, I was explaining to her what we did. So I was like, yeah, we learn from people and then we create like environments or we create tools for them. And then we go back to them and we ask, like, is it working? Is it not working? And she just looked at me and she said, okay, that's what we did. Like, because they talked to the people and then they created an experience, and then they went back to them and said, how was it? And then they evaluated it and they made adjustments. So I think it happens even people who don't have the title of designer are designing. And I think that's important to recognize.
Thank you for that, John and Ida. Do you, there's a lot of amazing things going on the board. Probably I can share and just sort of skim through, but anyone wants to speak about anything that you've written specifically, feel free to do so. I will just quickly share my screen.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out, Kyle mentioned the Design Justice Network. They're one of my favorite principles when it comes to how do we do design? How do we shift the power of design? Who holds the power? I don't know if you want to speak to that, Kyle.
Can do. Sorry. It's like cleaning up. Can you see me okay? Oh, sorry, just on my phone. Yeah, I think I can't remember when I came across it, but the Design Justice book's really good as well. And I think you can get it as a free download. But I think that for me was a really interesting and important introduction to kind of justice and sort of like the role of designers, probably as they should be, sort of to counter some of these things that you and John have been talking about. So I think it's been helpful, and there's a few communities. I think they've kind of gone to ground a bit. There was one in Scotland and London and Manchester, but I don't know if there's been any meetings recently. But it's definitely worth plugging into those communities and showing up, because I think we can have conversations like these as people who sort of have designer in their job title or not, just to sort of recognize where these things show up. And I think that word power that you said as well has been really important. I know like George A has talked about power in design as well. It's quite a powerful concept to kind of consider when designing as well. So I think there's loads I could probably talk more about, but yeah, definitely thanks for the airtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Design Justice Network, they do really good work, and like Kyle mentioned, they have these principles and they're also translated into different languages. And they also have a Slack channel that you can join, and they also have local chapters. So I definitely recommend. And the book is great, like Kyle mentioned. If anybody wants to do a book club on that book, I want to reread it. So let me know.
Anyone wants to like speak about the shift note you've put on the board? There's a lot of amazing ones. I don't know which to pick. One thing I've learned by now from John is to stay quiet, even if it is very uncomfortable, until people start speaking. So I'm gonna like pause there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
I don't mind sharing.
Oh, amazing.
Um, I'll share what I've got, but then also kind of leads into a question that I've got for you, actually, if that's okay. And it came from a session I was in yesterday around lowering the barrier for people to engage and share. And it was because there was someone who was super qualified in a lot of her life experiences, but she felt that she didn't have a voice or wasn't qualified enough to share her experiences, and AI was the topic. And I find that with quite a lot of people who don't engage because it's a bit scary, whereas their lived experiences of voices are really important. And so my question kind of comes from, with the monthly sessions that you've got and any events that you've done, how do you kind of engage people who tend to stay on the sidelines or don't want to talk or join in because they don't feel like they're qualified, and avoid kind of creating a bit of a bubble of people who are already in this space that would already engage because they're really excited about the topic, be it design shifts or kind of creating a systems change?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think within the session, something I try to do is from the beginning set up agreements. So I have this idea that nobody knows it all, but together we know a lot, and really setting that scene before we begin the session. And I think, like you mentioned, it's not about being an expert, it's about also your lived experience. and how do we really encourage people to share also their lived experience in those spaces. How we run the sessions a lot is that we do small groups, and then we also come together as a big group. And I've been really encouraging myself to learn from each session. So I know no session will be the same because the people who show up is different. I usually partner with different people, but seeing what works and what doesn't work and then adjusting for the next one. So I've been trying to do that. So kind of moving from big space, small space, so people are more comfortable sharing in small spaces. And also inviting people, if they don't want to join breakout groups, they don't have to, because sometimes people had a long day and they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to participate by listening. And I think that's okay as well. And opening up and sharing those different options. Um, I think the thing that you mentioned around, so this is within the sessions, but then how do I make sure that I bring a diverse set of voices into the session? I think that's one area that I want to do a better job at, because I usually post about these on LinkedIn. It's my network on LinkedIn. So that's going to look a certain way. There's going to be certain types of people, usually people that are similar to me. So I want to try to do a better job at thinking about how do I actually get other voices as well into the session. I think because the the topic or the series has the word design in it, most people that show up are designers with the design title. And I also want to find ways to collaborate with people who are designing who might not have a design title. So yeah, that's one challenge that I want to try to work on. We have one hand up. Hello.
Go for it. Hello. Seeing so many familiar faces today. I wanted to share a bit more on the post-it I put. I observed that design is very connected with the industry, both in the agency part and the industry, like big product and tech companies. So maybe this is also another thing that we need to address, because even when we are doing a portfolio review or asking in the interviews, like how you show the impact of your design, we expect people to show the business impact, how they connect it with the business metrics. So one idea I was recently thinking how we can introduce maybe different way of measuring different things like happiness, like well-being. Can we as designer think about, like some frameworks to measure happiness? And I put also an inspiration from Bhutan. A few years ago, I was watching this documentary and they were introducing gross national happiness index instead of gross national product. Is it?
Uh,
Yeah. So that was, I think, was a shift for me.
yeah. I love that. And yeah, it's the results we get depends on the questions we ask and what we choose to measure. So if we can have more humane or more diverse measurement, I think that would make a big difference in what challenges we even take on.
Yeah, I love that point. I really haven't thought about how you always hear about, we're always trying to find KPIs to prove whatever you've done. It's like, this wasn't the fucking point to begin with. I was making something that is like a cultural object that it defines what people are about. It helps them like articulate it. That was what I was doing, or I made this thing because I just thought everyone would feel really nice, and they did. Like, that's
Yeah.
such a good point. That yeah, it's a horrible GDP like distraction.
Right. And I feel like sometimes also, like I think about this idea that the best experiences are the things that are unmeasurable. So usually, or unexplainable. So like when you have a really good experience, it's something like, oh, I can't really tell you about it because it was like so good and I don't have words for it. And that's the best experiences. But we're always taught to create things and then tell us, okay, what is the impact of the thing that you made, this event or whatever. But also remembering that some things might not we might not be able to measure it or put words on it even. It might be deeper than that. Any other questions or reflections or
I was
ideas?
I was interested in someone's point about ancestral archetypes, and I just liked it, but I couldn't work out what that would actually like. Yeah, I can imagine it connecting to some kind of like indigenous forms of knowledge and kind of ancestral knowledge, but I was intrigued by what that was and whoever wrote it, what they meant by it.
Yeah, does somebody want to speak to it and put it? Yeah, Ruchi.
Hey, yeah, that was me. Actually, this came up very recently because I was part of this life center design workshop, and I was making a persona out of nature. So I picked up a plant which is very native to the region I live in India. It's called the neem plant. So I was using ChatGPT to learn more about it, and that's how I figured that its roots or like its ancestral lineage is very deep, and where we discover the true nature or essence of why this tree is here. And when you read about those stories, it felt like if we can give voices to those, you know, things we know as elders, or like um, we don't speak about, but they exist in nature. So I almost felt like that could be a way to integrate, you know, those voices as well in the design process. So yeah, I don't know. I almost also feel like the archetypes and personas, they um are very fluid, so we could like identify them as not only elements but also the process, I guess. So anyway, that's what I felt.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I think is what I love about it is that you fit in your moment and you think of audiences, you think of the people that you know who are working on it, you use all of that. But then there's like dying wisdom all around us all the time that you always want and you kind of trust and rely on so much in everyday life. Is just like, yeah, I'll do this crazy thing because it's like the what would Jesus do kind of thing. But we don't tend to make those. Yeah, we don't. I haven't. It's very useful. I mean, I think about who the Jesus figures in different domains and what through ancestry. Yeah, thanks.
Good.
I was thinking sort of along some of those lines too, and your reference to the WWJD stuff brought to mind my neighbors. I live in Amish country, and that's my heritage as well. And so you were talking about like how do you measure happiness and how do you measure things? For the Amish, you are actually incredibly innovative. Their measure for success is not earthly. So like it doesn't matter if it fails, it doesn't matter if it blows up or it doesn't work for a season or it needs to change. So the measure is never success is never tied to what happens here.
Mm.
And then also like this complexity and simplicity thing. Um I see the Amish world as very, very complex because I know the social aspects of it. But the English world, and that's anybody who's not Amish, the English world kind of fetishizes that simplicity or apparent simplicity. And I think that's something as we look at other cultures, we need to always keep in mind that what appears simple to us is not always the case when you get to the inner workings of it. So I find like, like where do we place where do we place our value as important? And the two things that I put on the board were release perfection and release performative. Um, because like the performative is honestly professionally and academically what I'm drowning in at the moment. Like as an educator, if I read one more 5-paragraph essay, I will gouge an eye out. Um, and then also as a PhD student, um, who's a non-traditional student, I'm like, look, I will never write a 5-paragraph essay or something that performative. I don't actually have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm finding the tension in that very interesting, and I love the design shifts that I visually and as thought-provoking things. They're stuck to the wall in my office, makes everybody nuts.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, for sharing. And yeah, I think that whole idea of like glorifying other cultures that we might not know so much about and thinking that this is the answer or this is the better way of doing things, I think is something to always keep an eye out for. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your wonderful thoughts, reflections, and questions. And thank you, Ida, for kindly agreeing, like doing this with us. And I will hand it over to John. But before that, huge thank you to the Steps team for hosting us very kindly and graciously. Over to you, John.
No, thank you. This has been a tremendous step collective. I thank you both. It's been so much rich stuff. As always, we'll share the recording soon after. I'm just going to drop another couple of things in the chat. That's the Luma calendar. If you want to subscribe to that for forthcoming events. Our next one, he says, I should have thought about this, is May the 9th on citizenship. And we've got another couple of things coming up as well. And then also, due to public demand, we've put up our LinkedIn community, which I realized in hindsight was actually sort of like a really nice place that people can see other people who are just interested in this, and what the Steps Collective is trying to do. And I don't really know why we hadn't done it sooner. But we have now. So on that note, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. I hope to see you all at a Steps Collective thing in the future. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks everyone for coming and thanks for organizing.